Welcome to the Short Term Show, the show about short-term rentals and long-term wealth, with real property owners hosting real properties who are crushing it in the vacation and short-term rental space. And here's your host, Avery Carl.
Did you know that we're officially back in a buyer's market? That's right. Even though interest rates continue to rise, they are causing prices to fall. So there's finally room for you to do regular real estate investor things that we couldn't do for so long, like negotiate, make lower offers, ask for sellers to cover some of your closing costs. So it's a really great time to buy in terms of being able to get a lower purchase price and being able to negotiate. So if you're looking for your first or next short-term rental, it's a perfect time to reach out to us at the Short Term Shop. Let our team of agents in any of our true vacation market destinations help you find the perfect investment. Jump on over to theshorttermshop.com and click Get Connected to get started. We are brokered by eXp Realty. See y'all over there. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Short Term Show. I'm sorry about my voice. I've been sick last week. Sorry I sound like this. Hopefully you guys can deal with it all right. Got a super cool guest today, Jim Sheils. We have not really talked about this asset class that he's in at all yet, and I find it very interesting. It's a build to rent model, so new construction, straight for rental. And I'm really excited to hear about it today. He's a best-selling author, not only when it comes to real estate investing, but more also about lifestyle design. He's got a cool book called 18 Summers, which is kind of heartbreaking when you understand what it's about. The 18 summers you get with your kids. So anyway, I'll go ahead and let Jim introduce himself. How's it going, Jim?
Good, Avery. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So let's start just, if you want to give us a little bit of background about yourself, how'd you get into real estate, kind of just the high notes, and we'll go from there.
It was 25 years ago, which sounds crazy to say. I'm like, gosh, I'm knocking on 50 now. Where did this all go? And it had started with, I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to go off on my own and was looking at a ton of business opportunities, full of just wind and fire. And I kept coming back to real estate. 7 out of 10 millionaires in the US made their money in real estate at the time that I was looking at. I think it's actually gone up from that. And I never liked Wall Street. I grew up near the area, but I liked the tangibility of real estate. Right away, it made sense. Buy this, put this much into it. Now it's worth this much. And that was the start of my journey out in California. And I bought, fixed, and resold hundreds of HUD foreclosures out there. Starting with one and then slowly growing, and then liked the fundamentals better in Florida and moved here in 2005. And then after the meltdown, continued to do bulk foreclosures, not only working with investors, but for my own portfolio. But about 10 years ago, the market really started to change. All of that inventory from the meltdown was going away. And my now partner approached me and said, hey, what if we built our own properties instead of looked for old fixer-uppers to focus on? And that was the birth of our build-to-rent program before the term build-to-rent even was there. And that's really, in the 25 years, Avery, I hit my stride 10 years ago. I was a slow learner. I had ups, downs, survived the meltdown. But build-to-rent has produced more for me and my clients than any other niche, has freed up more time to be with my wife and 5 kids more than any other niche. And I'm more excited about that than any real estate niche I've been in before.
That's awesome. And let's back up, because a lot of people are comparing right now in 2024 to 2008. You experienced 2008 as an investor in some form or fashion. Maybe you didn't have the build to rent thing going already, but can you kind of tell us what that experience was like and what you learned from it, and maybe compare it to what's going on right now, since that's everyone's favorite thing to do, sounds like?
Yeah. I went through '08. It was very painful. I scraped the grounds of bankruptcy, barely pulled up just in time, protected my investors. It is a lesson that I will not forget ever. And I do not see the same thing here now. And one of the reasons why 2008 happened was because of very, very, very loose lending guidelines. And we're not seeing that now. In fact, for a lot of the time, a lot of people were even buying cash on properties. So the leverage in the market is completely different today. And we also have in like Florida, and you're a fellow Floridian, like Southwest Florida is one of our busiest markets right now. Well, 06, '07, it was completely overbuilt. There had been overbuilding there. The people weren't there to fill them. It was way ahead. And so there was an oversupply of properties. And there was also very sketchy mortgage underwriting. I mean, no other way to call it. It's very different now. That has been reined in on the mortgage guidelines. And also, we're at low inventories. And so I see a difference now. Yes, there could be some slippage. I'm not seeing anything right now. Now, if you want to start talking in 2030 because of some other big financial things, yeah, I think there's going to be an issue. But right now, where inventory levels are, I think we're actually probably in certain areas of the country, and every area is different. We're going to have some more growth because of lack of supply and also demand and population growth occurring, especially in areas like Florida and Texas.
Okay, I'm glad to hear you say that because there's just so much chatter online about, oh, it's the same. Y'all aren't seeing the writing on the walls. All of you real estate investors are about to go broke. And I personally don't think that's correct, but I was 20 in 2008, so I was not investing in real estate yet to be able to speak from experience. So I appreciate that.
It was a heavy time. And people say, oh, what if '08 comes again? It's in my new book, The Passive Income Playbook. This was the big lesson I learned in '08. Own less of better quality with less leverage. That's it. I owned hundreds and hundreds of properties in marginal areas, deferred maintenance, tougher to manage, high LTVs. I own way less properties today of better quality, better areas, less leverage. I have more equity and more cash flow than I've ever had. And so for a lot of people, they get wrapped up in how many they have. And, there's almost 100 house club, and I way over surpassed that. And it sounds great, but it wasn't, because it wasn't about performance. It was about just stacking up these numbers and not looking at the fundamentals. So that's what I tell people. Oh, what if '08 comes again? Well, if you own less of better quality with less leverage, you'll be fine.
I agree with that. I've got 2 apartment buildings right now that are in like C areas, and they're so difficult to manage. And then the guy across the street let his apartment building just become a complete it is condemned now. And so now there's homeless people over there, squatters breaking into our units, and it's just like a whole thing that we kind of got to get rid of them. And we've only got that problem on those 2, but we are 1031 exchanging those into 2 vacation rentals. So it'll be less doors, but higher quality doors. So I totally hear that. Luckily, we didn't do that with our whole portfolio, but not all of them can be big winners.
No, and you're going to learn of that. But again, that's taking a step back to take steps forward. And when you look at real estate, one of our number one principles, we look long term, because there has never been a time to hold real estate over an 8 to 10 year period where it's been bad, with the exception of where's the area, what's the performance, what's the turnover. And so you have to look at these things, because you don't want to constantly be giving everything back and then some to try to keep that equity train. That's why I said, if you can just go into less properties, you can have the best of all worlds. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I have to agree with you. So let's talk about this build to rent model, because this is very interesting to me, because we typically will buy fixer upper properties that need some work, but sometimes you get into these things and you're like, by the time you spend all the money that it's going to take to get one where it needs to be, you might have just been able to build a brand new one that doesn't have any problems, that's brand new, for the same amount of money. So I'd imagine you guys are doing this at scale. So I'd love to hear kind of how that works. You kind of went into how you kind of got into it, but I want to hear in more detail, because I find this a really interesting asset class here.
Yeah. And again, we were doing more bulk foreclosures, like fixer uppers. These were not vacation rental areas. And again, I own some vacation rentals in, the downtown area of St. Augustine and beaches areas, very strategically located. This is more long-term rental areas that we were focused on for buying these foreclosures, fixing them up and renting them long-term. And when you really started to look at the numbers, there was something that we found with the long-term rentals called the 3-year curse. It didn't matter, Avery, if we got in there and did new roof, heating and cooling, plumbing, update kitchens, baths. By year 3, I just knew on these older houses, my maintenance and repairs were going up. And our average tenant length was a little over a year. When we went into the new construction model, where we were choosing better where we wanted to build, so it was better areas, and also what. We don't just focus on single family. We also build duplexes and quads. Because why? Well, these are in demand. They're strong residential. You can get residential financing. They produce better cash flow. There's less of them available out there. And once we started to do these, and now we can look back, Avery, we've done a few thousand of the new construction, actually almost 10,000 units, and thousands of the old properties. A couple of things we saw. The surprises went away. I'm sorry, when you're doing an old house, you can't always see the sewer main. You can't see what's behind this wall. We all know the Tom Hanks movie, The Money Pit, one of my favorite movies, has some merit to it. And the TV shows sometimes hide that. And what we found is we had less of those surprises. We could give longer warranties. Our tenant rate went from a little over a year of occupancy to a little over 3 years. That's a big important part when you're first getting an asset out on its stabilization in the right direction. We were able to, again, our turn costs on properties were down over 70%. So this was really important to be able to hold. Because what I like to look for myself and our investors, if we go into a property in a few years, I don't want to be ready to throw the white flag because there's been so much turnover, maintenance, repairs, tenant issues that, I'm tired. By year 3 with the new construction, we're seeing, wow, yeah, we took a little less cash flow up front that was promised, but we didn't give it back to the property. We were able to keep it in our pocket. The wind was at our back with the fundamentals in Florida. And now people are like, geez, I want more. I'm ready to do more instead of feeling overwhelmed. That's the general feel we got. And new construction just has better bones.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And so let me ask you this, because it's really easy to just go buy an existing house. And yes, you've got these surprises and you never know what somebody's done to it underneath it and all these things. But you're not having to deal with permitting an entire development. So can you talk a little bit about the process of that? Because I think that's a different thing. I myself, I'm no longer, but was about to build a primary home, and lot's pretty flat, go get into permitting and they're like, hey, you're going to have a 4-foot retaining wall and your property will now be below grade in Florida. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So like that kind of surprise, I'm like, I'm not doing that, period. I'll just renovate what I have. So that's something that I think a lot of people who are used to investing in existing properties, they're not used to those kind of surprises. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Look, there's a larger learning curve for going new construction, but there's 2 learning curves. Yes, we do we've done like a defunct golf course in Jacksonville, 1,000 lots. That took a few years to first of all acquire the land the way that we got it, go through all the development approvals. That's a big project. And that's what most people think. Oh, I have to take on this raw land. And where you want to know right up front is don't think, oh, I'll have this ready in 6 months. Not the case. You're probably looking at something like 2 years. However, new construction doesn't have to be these big developments too. We are specializing in doing a ton of infill lots. So this is where it's an existing neighborhood. And, there's already establishment, maybe a good percentage of homeowners and renters. And if a lot is already in an established neighborhood, getting the approvals is much easier than starting with a raw piece of land. So for some people, it might be good to start with one on an infill lot. And, if you're like, gosh, I like the idea of this, but that just seems too much, whether you're finding an old house and fixing it up or whether you're building a house, you have to decide, do you want to be active or passive? Because some people say they want to be active, but then they find, geez, I live 3 states away and I don't know how to find a contractor, whether to fix up an old house or build a house. So you want to leverage off of some team with a reputation. That's what I would encourage, especially with build to rent, because there are higher things. And if not, just know there is a learning curve. Absolutely a larger learning curve from when I used to rehab homes to now building homes. There are more pieces to the puzzle. So it's something you want to be clear on and something you want to consider before going into it. But again, don't start with a big piece of land. Start with an infill lot.
This episode of the Short Term Show has been brought to you by your friendly short-term shop real estate agent. We are hyper-local and totally dedicated to your success. Whether you want to buy your next short-term rental or sell the one you currently own, we would be honored to earn your business. We are in all of the best vacation markets in America. Find us at theshorttermshop.com. That's theshorttermshop.com. Brokered by EXP. This episode is brought to you by Short-Term Rental Listing Advice. Join this Facebook group and post your listing to get advice from other hosts, including myself, on how you can improve your listing. Or just post your property so you can show off. Join us at strlistingadvice.com. That's strlistingadvice.com.
I think that is really good advice. Just start with a single lot, because especially during the boom in 2021 from COVID, when it was really hard to get existing properties, we saw a lot of investors coming into our markets that would call us, call our real estate agents and say like, okay, I'm going to develop. I'm from California. I've never been to the Smoky Mountains, or I've never been to Destin, Florida. Find me a big piece of land to develop. And then there are so many of those now that never made it past, the second step, because it just wasn't as easy. These people from big cities think they're going to come in and develop us bumpkins in these small little vacation towns. And then they get into it and they're like, oh, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
No.
So
No,
starting with the lot is a good idea.
And you make your money when you buy the land. If you buy the land wrong, you are stepping off on a dangerously wrong foot. So you have to do your numbers on that. There are a lot of numbers that go into getting a piece of land developed. You miss some, on your impact fees or other things that you're not clear on, you can go upside down very quickly. And we've seen that. So that's why I always tell people, have your due diligence. Make sure you're working with maybe a mentor or someone that's done that. Because if you miss a few numbers on that land acquisition, you could be upside down very quickly.
Yeah. Buying those big pieces of land makes me nervous. So I think my next question is, something that I ran into. I've bought a few spec builds, so didn't have to deal with this then. And trying to build this primary home was getting a floor plan. So if somebody's going to go try and do this, maybe they've got a lot that they want to start with. Where I ran into problems was the architects didn't really know. Like, I was like, okay, you know what? These are the things that I need this house to have. What's the most cost-efficient way to build this? What's the most cost-efficient style of house to build? And the architects didn't seem to know that. The builders didn't want to talk to you until you had a plan from the architect. So I couldn't really get an answer from any direction. So What would be your advice for somebody new coming into doing this?
Yeah, honestly, my advice would be start with something very basic that's already out there. We're at a lucky point where we have our own architects. We do our own development in-house. We have, a set menu of houses that we stick to because we're looking to do nice homes, but not custom homes. That's not our model. And I tell people, if you're looking to build a custom home to start, again, you may have to bring in some sort of consultant. I know, like with an oceanfront one that is totally outside of my niche, but I brought in a consultant to help me with this. Because even though I have a part of a building company and a builder, it's a very different build. So if you're going to do something very niche, you might have to pay for some extra consulting because, like you said, you're going to be stuck in between. The architect's not sure, the builder doesn't want to talk to you to have a good set of plans. So you might have to put some money up front if you're going to do that. Now, another way to save is if you're going like our model, again, we're at the workforce housing, just below the mid-range for pricing in the area. And so these are more basic models, nice models, but single story ranch, single family homes, standard duplexes, standard quads. And so it's a little bit easier to get that. And so we follow the same plans. We have a small range of plans that we follow over and over and over.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's really wise. Just go basic and just keep building the same thing over and over once you find something that works.
Yeah. And I understand the allure and the fun of something custom, especially if you're doing short-term rental. But just know that is where there's going to be more cost. There just is.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to switch gears for a minute and talk about the lifestyle design and the family side of your business. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I went into real estate because I wanted to buy back my time and be able to have what I call legendary family life. And there's no ego to that. All that means is all the things I dreamed of doing as a kid that we couldn't because we didn't have the money, I'd get to do as an adult with my own family. And then my dad, who's one of my best friends, we lost him 2 years ago. He struggled with money his entire life until I was able to retire him, 15 years ago. And so all the things he didn't get to do, I always wanted to kind of take the torch and do. And that's what the ticket for real estate was for me. What I saw, being young and impressionable in my early 20s was guys that were my heroes on stage with big balance sheets behind the curtain. It was a very different scene. And their relationships were in shambles. Really, the pictures of them in the Bahamas on the beach with their family didn't match up. And again, I don't think there was ill intention, but they almost all the things we had worked for, they forgot that they were very successful in real estate, but failures at home. And so I wanted to be successful in real estate and successful at home. So I started to make it a very clear priority, even to a level of discomfort that could have affected business, to do some things differently than I saw a lot of other investors doing. So I have a very regimented and dedicated calendar to my family. And I've built my businesses around that, where right now I'm able to work from Costa Rica for 3 months out of the year, a dream my family and I always had. I don't miss date night with my wife every week. I spend a day a quarter with each one of my children. I could have the big corner office at our building company. I have a small corner office in the corner of my yard. That's how so I've really designed it where I want to make sure I get the most out of my 18 summers. And as you know, that's the name of my book. I read a stat years ago that the average person will spend about 85% of the quality time they ever have with their children by the end of the 18th summer. And that makes a lot of sense.
That is such a weaponized statement. Oh, it's horrible. It's so horrible.
Well, but it makes a lot of logical sense. Like your 4-year-old is not hanging out with you as much as your 22-year-old. And if they are, that's probably a problem. And so you want to make the most of that time. And that's where I think intentionality comes in, because that's the average person. 18, they go off to the military, to their next endeavors, college, whatever it is. So I want to make the most of that time. And what I've learned, when we've done lots of workshops, retreats, it's kind of my side passion all around real estate, that if you do those first 18 right, they'll come back for more. I have an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old. And one of the biggest compliments we have is, gosh, they still want to hang out with you a lot. And I think that is only earned if you actually are intentional and you're dropping deposits of quality time consistently along the way. And so that's what my book, The Family Board Meeting, is about. How do we stay consistent in our marriage? How do we stay consistent with each of our children? Because really, I would sacrifice my entire real estate portfolio to make that happen. But I've also learned you don't have to. There's a way to integrate and be able to have success in both.
I agree. My grandmother always said, she is 96.
Wow.
She always said, if you play with them when they're little, they'll play with you when they're big.
I love that. And she's dead right. She's dead right from the experiences that we've had. And we have this bad habit, Avery, of delegating ourselves out of family life. Like we've had to learn the art of delegation to be successful real estate investors. I think it's like a martial art, right? You can't be everywhere at once, and to delegating to your business. But what I found is we forget, we delegate out things in our businesses, but then we take that skill set home and we start to delegate ourselves out of family life. We delegate it to a spouse or a grandparent or a nanny, a babysitter, and we're really not around. And when that happens, and again, I've done lots of studies, it's in my book, all of a sudden people realize they're kind of a stranger in their own family life. They're basically a part-time disciplinarian, a roommate, an ATM machine, and that's a terrible feeling, which can cause a lot of bitterness, guilt, depression. We don't even realize we're doing it. So you have to be careful of delegating yourself out of the moments you always dreamed of being there for your family, because it happens all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's something that's very important to me too. I was raised by a stay-at-home mom. I am the first woman in my family to have a career, but it's always been very important to me that no, I want them to have that stay-at-home parent experience also. And real estate really has given us the ability to give our kids like a two-parent stay-at-home parent experience without sacrificing, income. And we've been able to do that decently. So this summer, normally we go on a month-long RV trip in the summer. That like stopped working as well last year. So this year, what I'm doing is, Monday through Wednesday, working until noon, maybe 2, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's like regular summer. We're sleeping late. We're going to the beach. We're going to the pool. We're hanging out. Like we're not working. We're just hanging out. And I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And they won't forget that. It's, there is no substitute for quality time. And you can try to work around it, have something else fill in, have someone else fill in, whether it's a school or a club or a boarding school or a sport. Those are all can be great, but if you're out, the word I've seen, Avery, and I've worked with thousands of entrepreneur families now, is regret. Regret is very expensive, and it's one of the easiest shortcut solution I've said is consistent quality time. It downs the regret scale tremendously, but you have to be intentional, and that's our book is about scheduling quality time with your family. People are like, oh, I'm not going to schedule time with my family. That seems so impersonal. I'm like, really? As a real estate investor, do you not schedule time with your key investors, your most important clients? Why wouldn't you give your family the same respect? You think like an entrepreneur already. You might as well just, schedule that time, because that which we schedule gets done.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Sometimes you have to schedule your free time too. Schedule the white space on your calendar.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to schedule your own time, because I know that if I don't get to the gym, if I don't get to go out surfing, if I don't get to walk the beach early in the morning, I don't operate right. I don't know about you. I get kind of the jitters, a little bit of the crazies, because I'm not taking care of myself. And you are a very important thoroughbred probably for your family, but you got to break, you got to eat, you got to take care of yourself. And if you don't, and you break down, man, you're not winning the race. That's for sure.
That is true. So when you say schedule quality time, let's say like with each of your kids, how long does that have to be? Is it, we're taking the entire day off school, or, oh, we're going to a movie or to lunch or something?
Yeah, what I do is two of the main things I talk about in my book that have been absolute game changers for me and others is, first, with my wife, our date night every Wednesday night is non-negotiable, 5:30 to 8:30. I'm not available. I can't do a podcast, can't have a client meeting, can't do this, can't go to this kind of practice. It's our time. With our children, we have our quality time through the week. Like I turn off my phone 2 hours at the end of the day, so we're just at the beach swimming. But the big connection point for us, Avery, is we spend at least a half a day a quarter one-on-one. And I schedule that for at least 4 hours, doing something fun that they've been looking forward to, climbing the lighthouse, going to this pirate museum, going to the beach and building that, whatever they want to do. I go all in one-on-one, and I do a tech fest. My phone has never been invited to one of these days ever, nor will it ever be, because you take that one text, business call, useless Facebook thread, you're not there. And so that's what I do with the kids. And that's one of the main focuses of my book. Have you been able to spend a half day or a day a quarter with each of your children? And if you haven't, try it and see what it does to your relationship.
The not taking the phone with you is so important, because it's happened to me more than one time where we're on the way to the zoo and I look at my phone and somebody has like said something stupid on Facebook that like gets me all wound up, and not necessarily anything that you need to handle at the moment, but then you're just wound up and not thinking about. So I can't bring the phone. Totally agree.
No, and I bring up a story around that. I was, coming home. I usually leave my phone in the car, got out and had it in my pocket. This is my daughter's 9 now. She was 5 at the time. So this is about 4 years ago. She asked me to go on the trampoline. We love our trampoline time. I get on the trampoline, we start bouncing, and then the phone does that dreaded zzz, zzz, zzz in my pocket, right? It's about 5:30. and, breaking my own rule. I'm already thinking what's going on. I've left the trampoline mentally. I pull it out and someone messed up a closing. There was a simple thing that needed to get in for the closing to happen that day. It was supposed to happen end of day. Totally got the ball dropped. So where am I at? I'm furious. I'm swearing under my breath. I'm trying to work it out. The title company's closed now. There's nothing I can do. It closed a half hour ago. And I finally come to where I am, Avery, and my daughter's sitting there with the lower lip quivering, looking really sad. Yes, it's just, oh, what, sweetheart, what's wrong? What's wrong? And she just looks at me and she goes, Daddy, why are you so mad at me?
Oh,
And I was like, that one stabbed me through the heart. And I was like, you need to take inventory right now. We are not as good at multitasking as we think we are.
yeah.
We're just not. You don't understand what type of emotions. Real estate's tough. Being in the entrepreneurial ring's tough.
Mm-hmm.
Our little ones and our loved ones might not understand it. So if we're mentally getting into the ring, they can take it as, gosh, we've done something wrong. Gosh, we've angered them. And that was a huge lesson I've never forgotten. I'm still not perfect on it, but separating those peas and carrots, being all in with family, totally and completely unavailable, which might not be popular with some real estate people. Oh, I'm on call 24/7. I think that's crazy because the people that do that normally have struggling family lives.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of the mark of an experienced entrepreneur, because especially being in the real estate sales business, when I first started getting busy, I was like, a work martyr, like, oh, you don't work on the weekends? Like, you're
What's
not doing it
wrong with
right.
you?
Yeah. And then now when I hear other agents do that, when I say like, if it, obviously if it's something that is real priority that needs to be done right now, okay, there's only so much you can do with that. But if it's something like the answer, how old are these cabinets, or just something that can totally wait till later, and you let them know like, hey, I'm at my daughter's soccer game, or, we're doing a family thing until tomorrow. I'll let you know then. And they will like blast you like, what, real estate is a full-time job. And I'm like, in my brain, I would never say this to somebody, but it feels like you're at the beginning. Like you're not there yet. You'll learn eventually that, yeah. And
I always say you'll learn or you'll lose something very important, whether it's that time that doesn't come back or even the relationship. You have to have periods of complete and total unavailability without guilt.
Yeah.
And that's what I've come up to. And then I work better. If I'm always half in, I'm not great at parenting. I'm not my best, real estate self. It's when I'm clearly in one camp and then clearly in another, I get shit done. Yeah. And or I connect on a deeper level. And so people are always kind of half in on both. It's like cutting down a tree with the dull axe, that analogy. So
yeah, I totally agree. And I could talk about this stuff all day. But so Jim, we're coming to the end of the show. We ask everybody these 3 questions. So first question is, what advice would you give 20-year-old Jim?
Niche down and work within your genius.
All right. Great advice. And second question, what advice would you give a new investor who is getting started today in the middle of 2024?
Own less of better quality with less leverage. Keep it simple.
All right. Also very simple advice. And last question, what's your favorite book that's impacted your mindset?
There were definitely a few. I really liked The Alchemist because it's story form, easy to read, read it with my kids. And Man's Search for Meaning was good as well.
Okay, awesome. Great recommendations. Well, Jim, thank you so much for coming on. If our listeners want to find you and follow you on social media, where can they do that?
Yeah, if they want to learn more about our build to rent program or even kind of my passive income playbook, my wife and I have written it up. It's at jjplaybook.com. You can actually download an e-copy of our best-selling book and also learn how the fundamentals of build to rent work. So jjplaybook.com is a great starting point to learn about us, our story, our building company, and hopefully give you some insights on both real estate and family.
All right. Well, thank you again so much, Jim, for coming on. It's been a great episode.
Thank you.